had since the tragic death of one of our students. So I'd like to take a moment to honor a life lost too soon in a senseless act of gun violence. Aquarius Dunham, a third grader at Little Harbor, was fatally shot while on vacation with his family in South Carolina to attend his brother's graduation. He was riding in the family car when he was shot by a man randomly firing at passing vehicles. He was just 8 years old. He was the kind of kid who made every single classmate think he was their best friend. Aquarius touched everyone around him with his vibrant smile, infectious laugh, snappy shoes, and big dreams. He was known around school as the fastest runner, the best kickball player, and a basketball star. He dreamed of playing in the NBA. Our hearts go out to the Dunham family. We also ache for all the kids and teachers and families in our school community who are grieving this terrible loss. Portsmouth is a community that comes together to support our own, and this is especially true inside of our schools. Counselors and psychologists and social workers from all over the district and from SAU 50 have done heroic work helping everyone at Little Harbor process their grief. While we are deeply saddened by this tragic loss of life, we are also incredibly grateful to all of the people who work tirelessly to support Aquarius Dunham's family and our school community. Students looking for a way to honor Aquarius are invited to participate in a basketball tournament organized by the New Hampshire Spartans. Registration is now open for elementary, middle school, and high school players. All proceeds go to the Dunham family. The tournament will be on July 29th. More information can be found at newhampshirespartans.com. I just want to thank Lisa Rappaport, school board member, for helping prepare these comments. She is a gifted writer, and I really appreciate her help. So now we ask for a moment of silence in honor of Aquarius. Thank you, everyone. And now we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I guess before we begin, I would just like to comment about the wonderful graduation we had last Friday night. We had 266 graduates. I want to thank Margot Peabody, our vice chair, for helping me hand out 266 diplomas, which makes your hand hurt after a while. But anyway, we had a wonderful graduation, thanks to Mary Lyons and her team for organizing it all. We also want to acknowledge our debate team, our trivia team, and what was the other one? There were three of them.
State Challenge.
The Granite State Challenge. Nick, our student representative, was very involved in particularly the debate team, correct?
That's both, actually.
All of them, okay. You were all honored by the City Council, which was wonderful, and we congratulate you, Nick, and the members of those teams. Congratulations. And what's the next event? Is it coming up soon? Is there another competition this year, or?
So yeah, actually, so the debate team, right now we have representatives in nationals. I believe the tournament's over. I'm not sure how it went, but we did send, I think it was at least three, maybe three teams to nationals. So I'm excited to hear the results.
Congratulations. We have a lot to be proud of. Okay. Did I forget anything? Does anybody? No? Okay. Okay, acceptance of minutes from May 24th, our regular meeting. Do we have a motion to accept the minutes?
Move to approve.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. We have a public comment session. Do we have anyone that would like to speak before us? Do we have anyone on Zoom that would like to speak before us?
Considering it's just Kevin, our producer, I think probably not.
Kevin doesn't have anything to say. Okay.
Kevin,
Okay, now we have a very special part of our agenda where we have the recognition of school department retirees. So I think Margot and I are going to go down to the,
I think I was. We'll
too
have
much
those.
starts.
What
Okay.
we'll do is maybe speak to each retiree, and then at the end, I think they all come up,
Okay.
and if you can shake the hands of the board, they may want to congratulate you, and we have parting gifts. That's. I mean, this is an amazing roster of. It's weird to call it an amazing roster of loss, but we have an amazing roster of loss going on this year. Some true sort of titans, legends, and general great humans from the Portsmouth School District retiring this year, whose cumulative experience in district is 364 years out of this group. Deducting that from 2022 brings you back to 1658. And now you're wondering, what went on in 1658? Well, I'm here to enlighten you. That year was the death of Oliver Cromwell, the Lord Protector of England. The Taj Mahal was completed. Actually, Deb Quinn consulted on the paint job. Did you know that? And the Spanish garrison at Dunkirk surrendered that year to the French and the English. And the first census was conducted in Iceland. First ever complete census of any country. It was probably, I reckon it was done by hand vote, but just raise your hand and that's how they did it. But that's what was going on in 1658. We have, of our staff, 10 of them are from Portsmouth High School. Over 70% of our retirees this year are from Portsmouth High School. So they're taking a big hit. And we just want to recognize these folks for just being, again, linchpins to the success of this district. When you're here this many years, you're here this many years for a reason. It's because of your dedication, it's because of your care, and it's because you're good at what you do. So I just want to say thanks to all of you, and I'll just name you off. You could just sort of stand and raise your hand and wave to those who are here. First, we have Kathy Burr-Siegel, who has been a PE and health teacher at Portsmouth Middle School with 19 years of service in Portsmouth. Thank you, Kathy. Taking me way back to my early Little Harbor Computer Lab kindergarten days, we have Miss Bonnie Cormier as paraprofessional at Little Harbor for over 33 years, retiring. Thank you, Bonnie. Jeff Gardner, science teacher at Portsmouth High School, with 5 years here, but many years in Marshwood. So, congratulations, Jeff. This looks like he's ready to get his surf on, doesn't he? He just look at that guy. All right, not here tonight, but we have Leanne Gonzalez retiring. She's a clerical staff in the grade office at Portsmouth High School. She's been here for 14 years. Rosalind Grant is a paraeducator at the high school, and she's retiring after 33 years, almost all at Portsmouth High School, too. Adding on, we have Deb Rizzo retiring, student support teacher at Portsmouth High School, and she, did I say Deb Rizzo? Mm-hmm. Deb Heath, it's not Deb Rizzo. Deb Heath Barlow.
I didn't think she was.
People have been congratulating Steve on retiring lately. So Deb Heath Barlow is retiring after 21 years at Portsmouth High School, supporting our students, so thank you, Deb. Let's see. Next up, we have Dee LaPointe. I won't call her Dee. Your previous name? Sorry, I can't look. Dee is retiring from the science department after 23 years, so thank you, Dee. Let's see, next up we have Mary Lyons, principal at Portsmouth High School for the past 8 years. Thank you, Mary. Barrett. I was trying to come up with Barrett, Dee. I couldn't pull it. Sorry. Not here tonight, but a legend over at New Franklin, retiring custodian Ed McPherson after 21 years in the Portsmouth School District. Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Big Ed. Faye Montleone, a social studies teacher at Portsmouth Middle School, or Portsmouth High School, has been there for 36 years and is leaving our social studies department, so thank you, Faye. And next up, we have Deb Quinn, coming out of the PHS Science Department after 41 years of service. 41 years of service to the Portsmouth School District. Geez, thanks, Deb. Also up there in those years of service. No, I mean, that's something. Similar years, 38 years of service as clerical staff at Portsmouth High School is Miss Marty Ron. Thank you, Marty. Okay, did I see Nancy here tonight? Maybe not. But let's see. Nancy Roy, as you well know, is retiring as the Robert J. Lister Academy principalship. She has been here since 2001, which equals 21 years of service for Nancy. Thanks, Nance. Cullen Spiller, currently a clerical at Portsmouth Middle School, but has also been at Little Harbor School, has also been at Lyndon Franklin School, and done great work around the district all around, is retiring after 14 years of service, so thank you, Cullen.
23, they said, 23.
She's telling me that the paper I have in front of me is wrong and that it's 23. It feels like you've been I've known Cullen a long time, so you're right. That seems about right, doesn't it? Okay. And last but certainly not least is Ms. Darlene Tracy, retiring from her clerical position after 37 years in Portsmouth School District. So again, thank you so much. I wish you the best in your retirement and hope that you have fond memories of your work. I'm sure you have a lot of really crazy, weird stories that you can share, and I hope you write them down because it's been quite an adventure for all of you, I'm sure. So thank you, and if you could come up and say hi and collect a parting gift. Is that okay?
Should we all go in the front here?
You guys can go up front. Maybe they don't have to reach up. That way they don't have to reach over
Michael
here.
and I are going to go down there.
Here we go.
Okay. So if you guys go up front and come down from your lofty towers, and you can they can come up and just shake hands. Are we going? We see these people all the time. So come this way. I'm gonna take notes. Nancy, why don't you call up the bag? Why don't you guys all go? Instead of doing back here, why don't you start on the other? Okay. Sorry, it's obviously not. The more efficient route. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Ed.
If everyone could stay here for a moment, as soon as everyone's seated. I just want to recognize two special people that are here with us tonight. The first is George Shea. George, you have to listen to my little speech. I know, I don't think I need the chair. George, you have made incredible contributions to our school district, and we are deeply grateful for your many years with us. I distinctly recall being at New Franklin one day when you were the principal. The kids were flocked around you as you were telling a story. You looked like a king embracing your kingdom. The kids were mesmerized by you. It really left an impression on me. As assistant superintendent, there was no task that you couldn't tackle, from technology issues to your work with our faculty and staff, and your ability to crunch the numbers when the test scores came in. You are hardworking and dedicated, and you will be sorely missed. We wish you the very best as you move into the next chapter of your life. We have made a contribution in your honor to the Opportunity Fund, an effort that you helped create with Steve. Thank you, George. Good luck. And now we move on to Steve. I remember when we hired Steve in 2005. He became our assistant superintendent, but within a month or two, he had to fill in as our high school principal. Parents, teachers, staff, and students loved working with him. I distinctly remember we had two groups of parents who strongly disagreed about an issue at Portsmouth High School. We went to Steve, he listened to our story, made a decision, presented it to all, and the matter was resolved. That's the kind of leader Steve is. He is thoughtful, fair, and honest. He speaks from the heart. He went on to become our superintendent, and his accomplishments are many. We are deeply grateful for all he has done to make our school district one of the best in the state. We are also thankful to his lovely wife and two beautiful daughters for sharing him with us. Steve, in your honor, we have made a donation to the Opportunity Fund, a program that you created to financially assist students. Best wishes as you move on to our neighboring district. We are very excited to be able to continue working with you. Thank you, Steve. Okay, I think we can all go back to our seats. That would have been an excellent idea. Thank you all.
Thank you. Oh, thank you, Mark.
You're welcome. Thank you, Margot. I thought I was going to have to sit in the Queen's chair, but I didn't have to. Okay. Thank you, everyone. I guess we go to special presentations. Wellness. We have a report from our Wellness Committee. And we have...
Yes, we have our wellness coordinator, Chris
Chris.
Burke, here to give you a brief update on some of the efforts.
Since I was
around
the only one left in the audience, it's my time.
Please don't retire for a while, Chris.
Right. Well, people were saying, oh, you're retiring? I'm like, no, I'm not retiring. Don't let that rumor get around. Okay, so when I was here in March, I gave a pretty comprehensive update of where some of the wellness initiatives were. And since then, we did have a Wellness Committee meeting where we updated, again, some of the initiatives and looking at potentially needs that have yet to be met. And so I just want to make sure I'm hitting the mark on what it was that you guys were looking for. And I think we also want to talk a little bit about the wellness funds that have been allocated for staff and for students. Okay, so I think that I'll start with a quick update from the high school as far as the work that's gone on from there. I think the big win among many, but was the progress made around the suicide prevention training efforts led by Eiley. She had secured a grant from NAMI, the National Association for Mental Illness, and she was able to train 25 students and 15 staff on identifying suicide risks and referrals for help. And out of that, I know that they were able to meet with, the students from that group met with and trained the athletic captains of the athletic teams, and they have subsequently reached out to the PTA to do a training with the parents around recognizing signs and symptoms of risks around suicide. So both of those I thought were really, I love the idea of the parent association training and I think from the parent perspective, really appreciate it. So I think the plan is for that to happen in early fall. Then we also were able to get some high school students down from the Wellness Club and other organizations down to the middle school to meet with all of the 8th graders and really do a Q&A with them about transitioning to high school and what are some of the concerns. The 8th grade teams collected questions from the students ahead of time, and then they were forwarded to the 5 students, which included career and tech education students who came down to talk about some of the programs available at the high school. And those were also really well received. Eiley and Lisa Jacobus from the middle school coordinated those. And I think it was really appreciated that the students were really honest and open about, you know, being true to yourself, pursuing your own interests, really positive affirmations for the upcoming 8th grade. So that was rising 8th graders into freshman year. So that was a good initiative as well. And then Portsmouth Middle School continues to be really successful with their social emotional learning initiative and during success block times. And I'm working with Matt Mitchell right now to purchase some supplies for that program. That's set to continue under his leadership next year. And then the big initiative from the elementary schools has been the social emotional curriculum search process. We have vetted 2 curriculum, and we are set to, we have a workshop day scheduled for August 23rd, I believe. It's the day before we're all due back, where we're going to vet for additional curriculum, and from there identify 2 that we want to move forward with to potentially do site visits at schools who are currently implementing them, and then to make recommendations back to the administration on recommendations. So putting together a timeline for implementation during next year. So that's the long and short of some of the things that wrapped up the year. And I'll just give you a few comments of what I've gathered or thought about when it comes to the funds that you have generously allocated for both students and staff well-being. My recommendation is that from this point we go forward with an equal distribution of funds between the five schools, with Robert Lister's staff and students kind of be, they have in the past been kind of pulled under New Franklin to a certain degree when it came to support from the nurses, but really bringing it back to the schools to discuss and to identify what are the initiatives that they need for their school. So, for example, one of the initiatives that I would love to see happen at the middle school, or any school, but specifically at the middle school from teachers' perspective, is the development of a respite area in the building. So a place where teachers could go to meditate, to just take a break, to listen to some music, just to regroup. I've had several teachers who have said to me that they literally sit in their closet to get a break from stimulus and people talking. And so initiative, something like that might be a good use of those resources. But I think each school has different needs. I think New Franklin, I know for sure, wants to continue their staff yoga program. So I want to make sure that each school is heard before decisions are made about how to use those funds. And then my goal is to revitalize a wellness district-wide committee with the use of some of the staffs from each of the buildings who are working on those fund allocations of funds. So that's kind of where we are.
Deb, thank you. Do we have any questions from board members? Margot.
Chris, thank you so much. Can you speak to what are we doing for the SEL in the elementary school in this interim? Are we following Castle or?
Well, we're still, Open Circle is still being used. It's just not necessarily being supported by by Wellesley College anymore. So that program is still in place.
Okay.
And actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, because a recommendation has been made that we continue to support and implement that effort until the point of which we can switch over to another program. One of the things that came up at the meeting with the selection committee last week was an effort that we're going to try to identify some teachers who feel strongly still committed to Open Circle and try to mentor them with potentially new teachers who may not have had, just in an effort to keep that work moving while we wait for, until we get to the point of identifying the right program to take the place of Open Circle.
And if I could follow.
Yes.
On that note, then, are we thinking, in light of the great success of Success Block SEL, are we thinking about having some elementary teachers meeting with Matt to talk about some of the common language they've been using in the Open Circle to draft that into the SEL during Success? I'm just sort of like, how are we growing our
I guess I would
SEL
see us
labs?
growing from the selection of the new SEL into, because the curriculums we're looking at ones that are K-8 and if not K-12.
Okay.
So I'm hoping to build in that language as we grow, as the elementary kids move into the middle school, in that common language. And I mean, I certainly think that what Matt is working on as far as the language is common language anyway, and the people doing the work know the language. So I don't think that what he's working with is that far different from what kids may have heard around Open Circle. Okay. But that being said, there are much more comprehensive programs that expand into the middle and high school that we're looking at when that's one of the criteria that we're using in selecting a new SEL.
That sounds fabulous. Thank you.
Liz.
I have a couple questions as well. Just sort of trying to understand. I'm obviously not on the wellness committee, but I appreciate you coming in here and having spoken before. And I'm obviously fairly new to the board, having joined, been elected this year. So I haven't really been involved in establishing your role and whatnot. So I appreciate it. And so I guess I'm trying to understand a little bit where we're at and why we're there. So I guess my first question would be, why not, and maybe it's due to employment contracts, but why not start the SEL or pick an SEL before we start the school year so that the training can happen those first days of school? I just feel like, right now we're hit so hard with COVID, behavioral issues, teacher burnout. Do we need to get the teachers before the kids come in going on something new? I'm a little bit concerned with starting something new, continuing to explore and then starting something new a couple months into the school year, especially if it's anything like the school year that we just had, where, that adjustment period was a lot lengthier than it had been in the years past for children and behaviors and routines and whatnot. So I guess I'm wondering if there's any way to push up the selection process in determining something to move forward with. I know you mentioned that some teachers are continuing with Open Circle, so I guess I'm just wondering if there's any way to sort of streamline this a little bit quicker before school starts, or if there's a reason behind that, and any thought behind that as well.
Absolutely. So actually, there's a lot of thought behind that, and I can appreciate the concern that it's not going to be ready to launch in September. What I can tell you is that the selection of an SEL program that is going to be the baseline of a multi-tiered system of support, like literally the foundation of SEL across the district, is critically important. And so the idea of taking the time to make sure we get the right program with the right fit and we get the stakeholder buy-in, because if we don't implement it effectively and take the time to vet and to discuss and to look at different programs and find the right fit, then it's literally selecting something and saying, here, just go do this, without any particular buy-in from staff or from administration. So it's as hard as it is to feel like we need to get this done, and I can appreciate that. Our vision is far longer than September, and I didn't push the issue of bringing together people over the summer because, quite frankly, I'm more concerned about the teachers' needs to step away and to regroup and to regenerate and be ready to come back refreshed. So I think that, yes, from a perspective of September being the beginning of the year and that's the best time to implement a new program, in my opinion, far more effective to implement it effectively than necessarily on the timeline of September. So I think we're going to continue to do what we can do to support the students on many different levels on the SEL. But as far as the curriculum implementation, I think the approach that we're taking is in the best interest of the students in the district.
And is there like a huge monetary buy-in into some of these programs that have already been designed that may have material, or what curriculums?
There is, well, it depends on the curriculum. It depends on what the cost is associated with it. So some of them are significant. One of the ones we've looked at, Leader in Me, is about a $90,000 investment. And other ones are, they purchase by kits. They determine cost by enrollment. So it really depends on the program as to what the actual cost ends up being.
Okay, and then I want to circle back to, and I don't know if Steve, I know obviously Steve's moving on here, but I don't know if we could circle back or if it would be your role to pick up, when my son started kindergarten, he came from UNH Child Study Center, and we advocated for play-based kindergarten. It was told to me that Portsmouth already does play-based kindergarten, but UNH did all of these trainings surrounding play-based kindergarten. A statute was enacted, and I don't know what changed, if anything, within kindergarten, or if our teachers had gone through the play-based kindergarten training and to sort of integrate that at all. And I guess I just wondered if it was your role, or if any piece of this role could be really focusing on that kindergarten piece, because those are the kids that, my son was fortunate to have that SEL piece before he went to Don Darrow and was able to communicate effectively, where other children are either, they're going to a preschool, maybe doing rote memorization, and where they haven't built the social skills, or, they could be coming from nothing, and just being home with their parents all day. So, there's all sorts of backgrounds, and I feel like if we can really, hit the kindergarten piece hard as far as the SEL piece and that play-based piece, hopefully there'd be a trickle up effect, so to speak, with our children being able to communicate more effectively. I mean, I've seen the benefit in my son in preschool having done it, and so I guess I'm just wondering if there's any sort of consideration surrounding this kindergarten piece, and if we could think about it a little bit more.
Well, although my job encompasses a lot, that's not one of the things. But I will say that the SEL curriculum is intended to implement at the kindergarten level. So they would be having it as well, and they do as well with Open Circle. So they having some level of SEL would begin at the elementary schools, but I would defer to Steve or George as far as the play curriculum. That's beyond my,
They've all had a lot of training in play-based kindergarten. It's not really a curriculum per se by itself, but in terms of that general approach, all our teachers, I believe, kindergarten teachers have been trained in it. And just to reiterate one of Chris's points, we still use Open Circle K through 5, so it's just that they're no longer updating the program. Okay. So it's going to sunset soon, and that's just where we are.
And then my last question, sorry to have so many, but my last question, I wanted to circle back to peer mediation and understanding how that's being used in the school. I came from the middle school and was a peer mediator, and I just found it to be so effective. And I don't know, if George or Steve had any experience with the peer mediation program, or why maybe we don't have it anymore, if we do have it, and what decisions were made. But I found it very effective as a peer mediator when kids were having conflict, to be able to address that conflict in a way that didn't exacerbate the situation and actually brought people together to talk about how they were feeling, versus pointing the finger. And I felt like it was extremely effective, and obviously put me in the position for employment. And in what I do now, it encouraged me to go in that direction of trying to resolve conflict in that way. So I didn't know if that could be a part of our wellness piece moving forward, and can we scale it at all, or where we're at with peer mediation?
We don't currently have peer mediation in the district that I know of. To some degree at the high school, maybe not peer-to-peer mediation. And the results of the data on its effectiveness have always been mixed. It's sort of gone up and down in vogues over the years. I've been in schools that have used it, and it's anecdotally seemed effective, but I know there was the data is generally mixed on peer mediation. So.
Okay.
Carrie and then Brian. Thank you, Liz.
Is yours on social and emotional? Can I?
Are you two
She
having a
wants me to
side
go. She
conversation?
wants me to
I'm
go
sorry.
first.
Mine's on COVID, so I think
that's
maybe.
okay.
Stay on SEL first.
Oh, okay. Is your question regarding SEL?
Yeah, just a quick question. I don't know if I missed it, but what is the milestone timeline that you're thinking that you'll choose the new curriculum, and when are you?
So I would
expecting it?
envision in August selecting 2, and from that point, setting up site visits in September, making recommendations, I would hope by the beginning of October, and then decide on an implementation plan and what that might look like.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else have a question about this? Lisa?
Really quick SEL question. I've seen a lot of success from using guidance as a UA this year at Little Harbor, and I was just curious if any of the programs that you're looking at have some component of maybe providing more direct sort of social emotional education sort of outside of the classroom setting. I don't know if that's appropriate in middle school as high school as much, given the academic demands.
Well, the SAL programs, again, is where, and I think this is part of how much has developed even since Open Circle, is not only are they now looking K-12, they're also looking at parent components and community components. So I think there's opportunity, and really looking at all the staff in the building being educated in the language, and so things are happening in the UA classes in the same format that they're happening in the English classes. And so I think we're looking at a much broader implementation area in general for the SEL stuff.
Thank you. Anyone else before we go to our COVID question? Carrie?
This is a role that you have had. I know that there's some transition and things like that. I'm just curious, as far as I know that when we've talked before, this was a really hard year for folks, a lot of changes in protocols and things like that, and sort of, how that planning, I believe there's a transition in supervising the nurses, but anyway, how are people feeling about that transition? Is there any other support that is needed there?
Oh, you mean the chair of the department transition?
Yeah, and with that, the COVID management and.
Yeah, I'm not concerned. I mean, I think we as a team have worked really closely together, and I would continue to go and support to whatever way I can. Karen and I have we started together, we've worked together since we both came into the district, and I actually have a meeting scheduled with her on Thursday to begin talks about transition and budgetary stuff. And in all honesty, Karen has led a lot of the district-wide language around COVID with her clinical background. So I think you're in great hands. So I'm not at all concerned about it.
When we conducted the department head interviews, it was evident from talking to the nursing department heads that they as a department have just gelled so much during all of this. A group chat was referenced constantly, so now they have this sort of, they'll consult with each other on individual cases,
Yeah.
and they really have a fluid communication across the buildings that we did not have before.
Yes, absolutely.
And a lot more unanimity on subjects and support of each other, so it's really impressive.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's good.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I have a question, a quick question.
Sure.
I have heard nothing but so many accolades about Eiley at the high school. Could we use another one of her, or 2 of her, or 3, 4? I mean, it just sounds like her role is invaluable to our students.
Yes, I think her role is invaluable, and I think she's particularly strong at what she does. I think one of the things that needs to be looked at is that the difference between her role and the student assistance person role, which was her predecessor's role. So I think at some point it almost got merged into one when they're really 2 separate. And I don't think Eiley can do both jobs. So I think Eiley, her strength is in the clinical therapeutic role, and I think that potentially a SAP person, somebody with substance abuse background, and an alcohol and drug counselor, which is what Marcy was. So it's kind of like they're 2 different roles, but they're now one. And so I think that may be something that would be worth looking at for sure. And I think, honestly, looking like even the work between Eiley and Lisa at the middle school, I mean, the social worker role in the schools is so critical right now. And not that, I mean, their licensing is a little bit different, but their mantra is the same, and they work really well together. And I think the elementary schools are in need of something like that as well, because there's just so much happening in the schools that we need connect to resources and keep kids moving along. And especially this year, because there were so many barriers to treatment for availability and access, and we've just seen at the middle school so many issues resolved so much quicker since Lisa has been there.
So if you had a pot of gold, how many, who would you add and where? I mean, would you add someone to each elementary school? How many more to the high school? I mean,
You know,
is that not a fair question?
well, it's a hard question to answer, because I think in some ways you could say there's never enough resources, right? That every kid could use more support in whatever it is they're doing. So, but that being said, I think, and I started this work when I first began before COVID, and then my job became COVID. But this concept of this multi-tiered system of support, that's a framework of which we should be building our operations around when it comes to social emotional. And so looking at each school and trying to figure out what do we have as tier one, what do we still need as tier one. So for me to just say what we need wouldn't be professional. It literally needs to be a decision based on data. And my goal is to get us shifted back to this multi-tiered framework, and working with the principals and trying to build that in each school. And I think from there, we can more effectively identify needs than just saying we could use 3 more social workers. I think it would be a much better use of resources to do that. So I'd love to come back in the fall and talk about the multi-tiered system of support and where we are and where we could see that going.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Any other questions? Liz?
Just to follow up too, I guess I'm wondering if there's a role in the wellness in the SEL piece too for addressing, and I hope that, the board is able to address through some COVID funds or funding in general, the lunch monitor situation and the recess situation at the elementary schools. I'm not sure what the middle schools and the high school might face for, the monitoring type situation, but I just feel like it's a huge missed opportunity in elementary where the children are, really playing together, with their bodies on the playground and whatnot, and, the interactions and conflicts and things that happen. And I think, it's my understanding that given that there's just so many kids, we may not be able to ever effectively sort of address that. But I guess I just wondered if that has ever been a conversation. And I guess I'm in saying the board to address it, I guess I'm saying that I'm hoping that, we could address the financial needs of folks that might be in that position to bring in the most qualified folks and retain staff in those positions, or even obtain staff. But I guess I wondered if that's part of the consideration, or could be part of the consideration in this SEL, and COVID, addressing some COVID issues going forward. Oops. All right. Sorry.
And again, I'm not an expert in the elementary specific issues as far, but what I would go back to is that multi-tiered system of support framework, right? So it would behoove the elementary schools to be able to identify those needs and then develop a programmatic response and seek support for that. And whether it be more monitors on the playground or whether it's more purposeful social emotional activities in the playground, I wouldn't be able to answer that, but I think that's, to answer the point of your question is yes, that is a part of well-being, absolutely. Is safety on the classroom, on the schoolyard, and appropriate play. So I think that's a building-specific issue that the building has to address in what's in the best interest of their students.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Kerry.
I want you to correct me if I'm wrong, but it just is coming up, and I know that we've talked about this, and I want to just make sure. I think it might just be wellness committee conversations, but like this multi-tier system of support was supposed to be your objective years ago, and then COVID is you really took the lead on that. So this is something that has continued to evolve and improve, but is now more of your focus. Is
Exactly.
that so? As far as we're talking about this, I think you mentioned it, but I just wanted to like highlight it and bring it to the top that that's where we needed your time to really be spent.
Right, and for the past 3 years, the wellness issue was COVID.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was appropriate for me to switch my focus, and my background around emergency planning helped. But I think now we're able to kind of reshift back to the infrastructure and the school board goal around student wellness and the SEL indicators and all that language is where my work is returning to.
I think we're all excited for that. And I know
I
you
am
are
as
too.
well. Although I've enjoyed my time with COVID, I'm not sorry to say I'm stepping away from it. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank
We'll
you.
see you in the fall.
Yes. I'm not retiring.
Okay, we'll move on to our superintendent's report.
Yeah, so in your packet, you have the June edition of the Board and Administrator, as well as the email correspondence summary and email correspondence. You have a notice of 2 of the recent field trips that we've had, overnight field trips. And you have a letter, a joint letter from a variety of public safety, police, fire, the city, as well as us, around school safety. And that's something that obviously has been in the forefront of people's minds. And so always brings open opportunity for us to communicate with the community. Number one, what plans do we already have in place? How do we go through a process of planning for school safety? So we wanted to make sure that we were clear, particularly in the incident out of Texas where there has been a lot of criticism for the response. We wanted to be very clear over what the planning in general terms means here. And as I've said before, we're very fortunate to have a very good partnership with particularly the police department as well as the fire department, but around all of our emergency planning. And we go through a process of reviewing emergency plans annually. We submit them to the state as well. And I think, you know, in reflecting at the end of this year, I would say certainly on the forefront of people's minds probably still as we begin next year would be what are those pieces in planning around safety that are in place. And so this is particularly an important need around parent communication. And so I would certainly recommend that the year start off with attention to that in terms of how we're outreaching to parents and what the planning is. I would also say, just because it had come up, one of the visible things we did with the police after the most recent incident was to have them have a bit of a presence at our elementary schools. Of course, we have our SROs at the middle school and high school. So you may have noticed additional cruisers and patrols around our elementary schools over the last couple of weeks. And we certainly appreciate the police department stepping in at any point to partner with us on those.
Any questions? Liz? Ian?
I know I mentioned this to Steve briefly, but obviously Steve, may join us from Rye at some point. But I guess I was wondering if we could add the school safety piece to our board retreat as an item, and possibly hear from the chief of police at the board retreat or at some point. If that would be a more appropriate, or, I don't know if it'd be appropriate for a non-public. I guess I just want to make sure that some of the concerns that the community had stated in emails, as well as what our plan is for next year, as well as addressing, reflecting on past incidents and what can we learn from these things to be able to go over that. So I don't know if the board retreat's the most appropriate time, if we can add that or consider adding it to an agenda at a later date as well.
We'll be discussing with Zach what the future agenda items will be and the format for the retreat. So yes, I have written it down so we can talk to him about that.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Who had the hand up over here?
No, Ann.
Oh, Ian. Sorry.
I liked this letter very much, and I wondered, is this going to be published in the paper? I think it should be.
Yeah, there was discussion of sending it out. I don't know if that is out of the city directly.
It's pretty wide on social media.
They did a story about it in the Herald and linked to it.
I think the letter would be good.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you for that, Steve. Okay. Are you finished?
Yes. Over to Nathan.
Thank you very much. Now we move on to Nathan for the financial report.
In the interest of brevity, I would tell you that the message is the same as it's been in recent months.
the same categories are generating surplus, because really we've had vacancies that have plagued us, but we're surviving. I would tell you that I think the one comment that I would make is everything that I've said continues to be the same about your financials. The hope that the costs that we had borne that were potentially reimbursable under some of our federal funds, we'll easily cover that with budget dollars, because we've categorized them here. You'll see that these costs have been borne and have been represented all through the cycle. So working now on trying to prep us and ramp up to a close. And the budget was approved 2 Mondays ago, yes, a week ago yesterday. So we have an operating budget to engage for July 1, and off we go into the summer to make our transition.
Any questions for Nathan?
It's just me
oh,
tonight.
yes.
I'm sorry to take up everybody's time, but I guess I just first off wanted to say that I was glad to see the budget pass the way it was, and I hope to meet staff needs, and we're able to do what we can to create incentive to get what we need done in our schools and the folks that we need hired. I was a little bit disappointed, obviously, that there was, a bit of a cutback from what was being asked. I understand the reasoning behind it. I'm a little bit concerned with moving some of these funds to ESSER and, the needs of, I don't know what the school's plan is for this week with heat and whatnot, if it's going to get up there or not in the next couple days. But I'm a little bit concerned about how we're going to address the air conditioning issue moving forward, and making decisions, and do we need to get on a quicker timeline for contracting out or bidding out the air conditioning piece in our schools, so that we actually have something for next summer to help educate kids over the summer, because I think educating children over the summer is part of this COVID recovery that we need. And so I'm a little bit concerned. I mean, obviously the board was, Steve in the department was asked to see if we could cut back and where it could be. And I think, maybe some of us, we planned or understood going into it that we may be requested to cut back, but I am a little bit concerned about where we're going with ESSER dollars moving forward, and just wondering what that might look like as far as, are we going to be voting or making determinations? Because obviously all of our reasoning, I think the superintendent can only present so much of our reasoning for why we chose the things in the budget that we did, or why we went one way or the other. So I'm just a little bit concerned about how we're going to make up for that cutback, and also for the shift into ESSER funds, and when would we make a determination, or do we need to have a vote, given that ESSER's essentially part of the budget? What does that look like? And I understand the difficult place that you were in, Nathan, and obviously I appreciate the council taking on the community campus too. But I guess I'm wondering how we're going to address the AC issue, and voting on how we move forward or adjust our budget accordingly.
I guess
said a lot there, but
maybe the overarching answer is we shared last time a timeline, and it was at literally the 11th hour. It was maybe chasing up against 11 o'clock when we shared it, and so we didn't spend a ton of time there, but tried to compartmentalize and remind folks we've been talking about doing these elements, and they're timely. Like, we're moving ahead with with hiring, we're moving ahead with planning for summer programming. Chris just got done talking about wellness programming, school and students and staff. Those are all elements of those things need to start happening. We need to be working on that. And largely that was not because we're spending any of it today, but because it's coming as we launch through the summer and into the next school year. The capital items and some of those others, which right now represent a plan for the bulk of the corpus of the funds that we have, really, I think, wait for our new superintendent to join us, the new leadership team to be established, and the retreat to happen, and the board to, in general, bring on this leadership team, and then contemplate what are our priorities, and are there other things that will rise to the surface quickly that had not been considered? It's important to note, we have and I will say this, and I don't mean to by exception point to things that we don't have, but we are positioned right now with air-conditioned spaces at the high school and the middle school for programming that needs to happen in the summertime. We are working at New Franklin this summer to bring that to fruition as well, so that highway locked air quality challenge space will provide us not only for that school year-round, but for our elementary population, for instance, in the summer months moving forward, a space that can be climate controlled that we can have programming in. So I think right now, the short list of items that we had talked about are moving forward based upon our conversation over the last few months. And those bigger items will wait until we get the new leadership in place and then have some more conversation. I'm hopeful that some of the rumblings I've heard about the opportunity for capital projects to extend beyond the previous deadline. I guess what I'm saying is, if we were able to put a capital project like an air conditioning project in place, but simply not be able to, based on the availability of labor and material, to complete it by the deadline, there's a possibility that there may be some deadline extensions, or trying to think, they used another word in the federal literature that I saw. I don't know that that's available to us yet in New Hampshire, but I think there's a possibility that may come. That might help. And so as soon as we've had a chance to talk more about that, I think we can start some of those capital conversations. But otherwise, I think the budget conversation is always a difficult one because it's a multi-stage or multi-step. We make our appeal here. We make our decisions to recommend forward a budget that has to then be added to the city's priorities in general. And the council had a lot to consider as they consider not only the needs of schools, but the community and all of the other departments under the umbrella of the city. So I would suggest to you that I think we certainly had to make some changes, but in the grand scheme, compared to the totality of the budget priorities that we had and what we did receive in this fiscal 23 budget, I don't want you to have great concern that we can't manage it. I think that we reasonably can shift those positions that they didn't pinpoint. We pinpointed as a part of our trying to meet the certain dollar threshold, what things that are here reasonably would qualify for ESSER that maybe we could shift and help tackle this financial challenge that was posed to us. And so those were the most appropriate that we had at our disposal. And so hopefully we can make that work for fiscal 23 and begin our deliberations and plans, for what we want to do for 24 and beyond. I think there's funds there to make it happen. This financial looks good. As I said, unfortunately, it's because we had a lot of vacancies that we hopefully won't see every year moving forward. And right now, let's wait and get the team together, and then keep talking through the summer and into the fall, and we'll make our plan for next year.
And just to clarify, what's the process? Like, we have the new team on, fall comes, and maybe there's something we need that we didn't contemplate. Do we then vote to sort of switch funds from one allotment to another allotment, or do we just vote to sort of have that move forward, and then as we fill vacancies, address the funds? Like, how does our role or voting sort of play in moving forward?
I think that we'll bring this conversation back, as we have repeatedly, and make sure that the conversation is here, so that you have some sense of what the priorities are. You help to shape where we're headed and how we're going to spend the funds. I don't know yet how the new superintendent will want to interact with the board in terms of deliberating on those things and contemplating priorities. That's something you guys are going to build in your your first few days or weeks, months together. So I guess I don't want to suggest much more than that, other than the idea is, as we have now for the last year, we'll continue to talk about the plans and make sure that we're all on the same page as we contemplate. Certainly something like a capital project has to go out to bid, and you'll know that we're talking about that before we put it on the website and launch it. So,
but when we do just a policy, being a new member with the budget, I guess we do all these rounds of budget workshops, right, where the community is allowed to give input. And so when we commit to what our budget is, are we as the board only committing to a dollar figure? I mean, maybe we need to, I don't know if I need to get legal clarification on this, but are we committing to a dollar figure, or are we committing to everything that's in the binder that we're sort of doing our work sessions and whatnot? So, if, how not so much stuck doesn't feel like the best word, but how stuck are we in our vote and commitment to the community after these sort of rounds of workshops in the positions that we voted on after the workshops and whatnot, and public comment?
So, I mean, we certainly could talk to the legal department and try to help answer the questions if there's additional questions, but I guess I would say to you, we put together the budget binder that you guys go through. It is, to some extent, a Bible that we refer back to for what was our plan, how many teachers did we think we'd have there, but the budget is really a total number, and ultimately your administration will, with your support, deliver on the needs of the schools. You put this budget together now. We put this budget together starting back in October, right? So some of what our foresight would provide then doesn't reflect what ultimately has already started to change and what will continue to change as we go through the summer and then launch into the new school year. So if, for instance, in the course of the year, we determine that we don't need one of those, but we do need one of those, then we talk about it and we do that. And so I guess in answer to your question, it's a roadmap, it's a plan that we put together, but the budget is really a number. And the goal is don't ever overspend the number, because that's, we're collecting anticipated revenues and raising taxes as we need to address all of the needs, and that was what we had as a roadmap for it. So, I don't think I've ever expected that everything will be to the letter exactly what we thought 18 months in advance. We have to be more flexible than that and dynamic as we face the changes in our community and our conditions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the clarification.
Any other questions for Nathan? Ian?
I'm just hoping that you will spend all this down so we don't have to give any back.
Today it's early today. Every year I think we chase a little bit closer at me having a better sense. I'd like to have a really firm sense by, say, the 1st of April rather than the 30th of July or something. But we're getting closer, and I think this is going to be, given the COVID dollars that we had spent, I think we're going to be pretty close to having spent the funds. So.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Nathan? Thank you, Nathan. Okay, now we move on to old business. Do we have any old business?
Any old business?
I guess the only thing I would say is please remember our retreat is August 2nd and August 3rd. So we're going to have 2 nights for a retreat in
5 to 8 p.m.
5 to 8.
Are we confirmed on those dates now?
Yes. Now,
Okay, because when we were talking at almost 11 at night last time, you had said the 4th, and then I think we went back, and then I saw in the minutes it was the 2nd and 3rd, because
I think it was always the
responded that I was
2nd.
unavailable those 2 nights.
What did you just say?
I was unavailable both of those nights, and I'm just disappointed
I'm
because I
likely
wish
to
I
be
could
unavailable as
make
well.
one of them at least. I thought we were looking at the end of that week.
I had the 9th for some reason on there too, so I had the 2nd, 3rd, and 9th.
the 9th was never on the
Okay, maybe
Google Doc.
Maybe I put that.
That's interesting.
August or September? We're
Those
talking-
weren't the dates that the most people were available. That's why I'm curious.
August 2nd, 3rd, and
I
4th.
think the 4th had the most people available. So I don't know if there was somebody who wasn't on the doodle maybe who was available.
So you were not available both the 2nd and the 3rd?
Correct.
But you're available the 4th?
Yes.
Should we try
The
to?
5th, if that was an option.
I'm still trying to push for, I'll be on Star Island as the medical provider. I'm happy to host us all for a retreat.
Ooh, now you're talking.
It's just an hour boat
So
ride.
we'll have to see if.
You don't have Zoom availability out there, do you?
But I'm the medical provider, so it
I have
depends
to
on
say
what's
though,
happening.
I tried to attend a retreat by Zoom last year and it was a failure. It didn't really work.
So maybe we can just
never been able to
readdress
attend a
that
retreat,
because
so I would really
it sounds
like
like
to
now
this
there's
year.
3 of us, 3 out of 9 that aren't available for sure. So
Are people available August 4th? Can we change one of those to August 4th? Thursday, August 4th.
but
Okay, so Carrie is not available. Hope is available by Zoom, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so why don't we change one of those 2 nights to August 4th?
Do we need to maybe check with Zach?
Yeah, we are. We know.
Confirm?
I thought we were going to
think he was
confirm. I thought there
available
was
the
going to be
whole
one
week.
more
We had-
round of confirmation. That's why I'm.
We
just
had
getting-
confirmed, and the minutes were in there, so I think it was just confusing when everybody signed off on the minutes
Oh,
with that
I
date.
see. Yes.
Um,
I should have said something
So,
before that.
that's okay.
Yeah.
We'll go back to the drawing board. That's
Yeah.
a good catch. I had it as the
thank you.
second, and
The
that's what the
third.
doodle. Yeah, we had it as the third and rolled back on the second because when it was needed to have 2 nights,
Okay.
that was the other night that was on. So we'll throw the fourth in.
Thank you.
Okay,
I'd love
so,
to be able
and
to
we'll
be at
get
one of
to
them.
Zach, but everybody,
Zach says he can make the fourth work.
oh, good, okay. Shall we change it right now then to the 2nd and the 4th, Tuesday and
Do a show
Thursday?
of hands, so we're clear.
Yeah, who could make Tuesday and Thursday, August 2nd and August 4th?
Should we do individual? I mean, each night
Okay,
separately.
okay, well, we know
because-
that you can do the 4th,
Let's
correct?
just say the 2nd.
Okay, who can do
Hands
the
up.
2nd? And,
And I know Hope can.
okay,
Yeah.
and then who can do the 4th?
And I know Hope can as well.
Okay.
So it's the same
Let's-
numbers, except we add Pip. So it'll
Why
be
don't
the
we do-
second and the fourth.
From 5 to 8 PM, and we'll provide sandwiches, correct?
We will provide dinner both nights.
Okay. Okay.
Wait a second, while we're doing this.
Are we confirmed?
Show of hands for the third.
Oh, okay, show of hands for
Can you do the third? You can't do the third either. Okay.
Pip can't do the third.
Okay.
And neither can Kerry, so.
So it's, okay.
So the
I
second.
can hopefully be there part of some of
Okay,
them, but it's
yeah,
just a
okay.
total
If something
gamble.
happens, you get called away. Okay. All right, so it is August 2nd and August 4th from 5 to 8 PM. We don't know where yet, but probably the school board conference room? Well,
Still,
we'll
yeah,
let
I
you know.
wouldn't, I also think we should just, I would pencil those in, but I would say that the importance of having everybody there for that first discussion is huge, and it might require us to really reconfigure once again. So I'm not, in the conversations that we've had with Zach, I think that first conversation, the fact that we have now 2 members that won't be there, I think we might need to really reconsider whether we can start on the 2nd. I think we might have to start on the 4th and look at an additional date the week after.
Week after, okay.
Which would have you back in Portsmouth? Yeah. Well, so that's why we're here.
Yes,
I
why don't
have
we try-
permission. This is fun. I love planning. This runs in, I'm not here.
August 8th, going once.
Show of hands for August 8th, if you're present in town that day, for a 5 to 8 meeting.
That's not looking good.
4, 5, 6.
Kerry, how about you?
Well, I'm looking, sorry.
Okay, 7. I don't know about Hope. What about August 9th?
We have a school board meeting scheduled for that day.
Thank you, so that's out.
That's what I was looking at
I'm
before.
available for that.
Okay, and then I'll roll to August 10th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, okay. I'm out that week, but that's fine.
Are you available by Zoom?
Nope. Okay, so let's all say we have the 4th confirmed, and we'll figure out the second night. I
Okay.
think that makes the most sense for now. Is everybody clear on that? We'll move it on our calendars to 5 to 8 on August 4th. And further scheduling will be communicated through email.
Quick question.
Mm-hmm.
We're not looking at going earlier in the summer, we'd be looking at later.
Later.
Okay.
Yep,
just for
because of
planning.
conflict with the admin
that's fine.
retreat and the July dates that came in.
Yep,
Yep.
okay.
Good question. Thank you.
You. For my sanity.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that, Pip. Good catch.
Good catch, Pip is right. Okay, I'm losing my agenda. What's next?
Consideration approval of Association of Portsmouth Teachers Agreement.
Okay, thank you, Margot. We will turn it over to Steve.
Yes, so you've been briefed by Tom Clausen of the negotiations that have concluded now with the Association of Portsmouth Teachers. Lisa and Ann were both on that committee. And given Tom's summary and the details of that agreement, we would ask for your approval of the collective bargaining agreement for teachers.
Move to approve.
Second, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any comments, questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Thank you. Next, we have consideration and approval of leave of absence.
Yeah, in your packet, you have a letter from Molly Dondero, teacher, requesting a 1-year leave of absence to care for her infant child.
Do we have a motion to approve? Second? Hip. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Steve, consideration and approval of employment.
So we have a number of positions to go over with you tonight for your consideration. I guess we would take the first one separately, perhaps, but we could probably take the rest of them as a bulk.
Okay.
We have been through a process, Zach and I, obviously Zach needing to be very closely involved in the process of selecting the very big shoes to fill to my left for assistant superintendent, and worked with Zach to develop a committee of diverse stakeholders and perspectives. Went through a process of screening a number of applicants, interviewing semifinalists, and eventually doing site visits to 2 finalists in great depth, and brought back to the committee to help inform Zach of a very important choice for the position of assistant superintendent, his right-hand person, if you will, to lead the district towards the visions that you've started to set out. So we're very, very happy to bring forward to you the nomination of Patty Haynes for the position of Assistant Superintendent. Patty comes to you with a PhD in education from Capella University, a master's in elementary ed from Central Connecticut State University. Most recently, she's been the Director of Teaching and Learning at Sanborn Regional District, but has also spent plenty of time in curriculum roles as well as elementary principalships through her career. And we're very excited to nominate her for Assistant Superintendent.
Do we have a motion to approve Dr. Haynes?
I move to approve.
Ann, second?
Second.
Margot?
Discussion?
Any questions or comments? Liz?
I just am hoping the superintendent can just elaborate briefly why this process may have been different than other processes, and whether going forward, is it a case by case basis or any sort of recommendation that we kind of get on the same page, because it seemed a bit different than the other processes we had placed for other positions, but obviously a shorter notice.
Yeah, so first of all, the position is unique in the sense that you've already been through a process to search for a superintendent, which was much about the district vision and what you expect from the leadership in the district. George and I have always worked, I think, as I hope the ideal team works, to say, here's the vision we need to get to. We need to work as a team to do it. And so the assistant superintendent's position has always been pretty focused on what that superintendent sees as a need to help him or her deliver on that vision. So, so the process also, as you referenced, had to be urgent because we were in late May into June to find a position while people are already settling into other contracts and where they are or where they're going. And so the process itself, I would characterize it as a very, very thorough process, diving deeply into the candidates. But not including, by design, right or wrong, not including a large-scale public forum as part of that process. At the end, I have every confidence Zach has chosen the person who is going to best partner with him to lead the district to where everybody wants it to go. So going forward, Liz, that would be a question for the future to what process. I certainly would hear and be empathetic to other people's interest in being involved, and that certainly could be a conversation going forward.
Any other questions, comments? Do we need a roll call vote? Or? No? Okay. All in favor of Dr. Haynes as our assistant superintendent?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I'll run through the rest because there's quite a few in terms of nominations for you to bring to you this evening. We have Abigail Clark as a one-year science teacher at Portsmouth Middle School. Abigail comes to you with a master's in education from UNH, and most recently a science teacher in Farmington. We bring Catherine Juster, a drama teacher for the middle and high school. Catherine comes to us with a bachelor's in theater and English from UNH, and has done a variety of directing in terms of camp theater work in the city, as well as a stint as a Little Harbor theater teacher last year. We bring Carolyn Durfee, speech and language pathologist for Portsmouth Middle School. Carolyn comes to us with a master's in speech language pathology from LaSalle University, and most recently a speech language pathologist at Interlake School in Meredith. We have Jennifer Shump coming to us as an elementary teacher at Dondero. Jennifer comes to us with a master's in elementary education from UNH, and most recently has actually served as a long-term sub at Dondero, and before that a kindergarten teacher in California. And Jennifer Berg, a special education teacher also for Dondero. Jennifer comes to us with a bachelor's from Plymouth State University, has worked with us as a literacy tutor here in the district, and has come to us also from Cumming, Georgia, as a special education teacher. We have Amanda Buckley coming to us as a school psychologist, district-wide. Amanda comes to us with a school psychology degree from University of Southern Maine, a master's in Shakespeare's theater, which I'm sure will come in handy as well, and as most recently a graduate research assistant for special education and literacy departments, and has also served as an English teacher at Massabesic High School. We have Brennan Lynch coming to us as a math teacher at Portsmouth Middle School. Brennan has a master's in math and curriculum instruction from the University of Vermont, and comes to us as a special educator from Montpelier. We have Joseph LeMay coming to us as a business teacher in our CTE program. Joseph comes to us with a Master's of Science in Accounting from Peter Paul College, Business and Economics in UNH, and most recently as a business IT mathematics teacher in North Middlesex Regional High School. And we have Jennifer Branch as a one-year elementary teacher at Little Harbor. Jennifer comes to us with a Master's in Education from University of Connecticut, and most recently as an elementary teacher at Memorial Elementary School in Newton. And that is the slate.
Yes, Carrie.
One question that involves two of these, is it in the certifications, other states, they usually translate, and then for specific things, like everyone has, it seems like DOE level accreditations in whatever state they're coming from, aside from science and business. So this is probably just a learning thing for me, but how are those qualifications determined? Do they have to become state certified educators in their roles?
Yeah, so they will have to, for those who are coming from out of state, they will have to secure New Hampshire certification, which, and George can speak to a bit too, is typically a process of, particularly if they've served in a similar role, not a big hurdle for them to jump through, but it is something that they have to do. Their contract that they get is contingent upon them having New Hampshire certification, so most of these people are certainly in process if they're not already done.
Yeah, in the first stage of that, often in the transfer, some are straight, it's called alternative two, just taking your credential in Massachusetts and transferring it to New Hampshire. In some cases, in certain roles, this happens a lot in CTE. A lot of people don't have a certification in auto tech, say, or something like that. So they get something called a statement of eligibility, which makes them hireable by the district. And then there's an interim plan that's put in place. They get an interim license, and they have 3 years to work on these set of competencies and demonstrate them. So in some cases, like business, that's often the case. So you'll get they need the statement of eligibility or an endorsement for us to hire them.
And, sorry, let me ask a follow-up. In the master, I know in general most are master's prepared folks, and could you just speak to drama in particular, and like the teaching? I just don't know how in the Department of Education certain subjects fit under, like literacy fits, math, like I just don't understand it.
So what's the question about drama specifically?
So does that person need to have a high school drama certification or a high school educator?
Yeah, so they will have to be certified, and in fact, Alden also went through a process when he was hired
Okay.
to get, and again, as George says, there are alternative pathways, typically involve being mentored by somebody who already has.
So similar to the
cert-
CTE
right.
that was
Yeah.
discussed.
I believe that's a 6 or 12 certification. I'm trying to pull it up now, but my Zoom is taking up my screen here. Yep.
Any other questions? I don't think we put a motion on the floor yet. Do we have a motion to approve the slate of candidates?
Move to approve.
Ann, second?
Second.
Liz.
Liz, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Okay. Next, we have committee updates. Does anyone have anything they would like to share regarding a committee they're on? Kim?
Sure. I just wanted to share that we had the Equity Council retreat on June 1st, and I don't think we've met since then, right? And it was very well attended. There was about 20 members who came, many students, 5 students, I guess, out of the group, so 25%. But Steve was there, Zach was there, board members were there, and 2 middle school teachers, 2 high school teachers. But the goal of the meeting was to kind of organize and clarify some of our values and belief statements. And we organized a mission statement that's in draft form, and sort of set a vision for what we think the work would be through those satellite groups that I talked about next year. So it was a good time.
Very good. Thank you. And how is the Portsmouth 400 group doing at the high school?
So we have not met recently, and
Yeah, we've had the last 2 meetings canceled.
yeah.
So I think end of the year with the kids, but they are still working on their interviews, I believe. At the oral histories, that's the main opening driver, so.
And I did talk to Tammy Jocelyn, and she is putting something together with Hadley Barndollar, some type of cookbook that they want to connect with the Portsmouth 400. And I'm not exactly clear. She was a little bit not sure, but the kids are going to write it. So the kids are looking at the different things that they cook in their homes and creating this cookbook. And I know Hadley is very much involved at the Greenleaf Rec, so that is one small update I have.
Anyone else? Thank you, Kim. Anyone else have a committee update? Yes, Nick.
Well, it's not, I mean, obviously it's not exactly a committee, but the student council had an election recently. We had the best turnout I've observed since at least before COVID. And actually, we had, unusually enough, a tie in the junior class election, which means that if we get a full 12-person council from the freshmen coming in next year, we'll actually have the largest council, to my knowledge, on record.
Wow.
So that's pretty cool. And we've also been seeing much better turnout from unelected members attending meetings as well. So if that can continue into next year, that'll be really encouraging.
Can I ask how you communicate those meetings to the school population?
Yeah, so Senate meetings are posted on the site, and also we try and do our best just to communicate them from word of mouth. And those are generally the much larger things. Class meetings, which tend to mostly concern prom, class gift, more just class-centric things, are generally more word of mouth. And then also it's, I think we do try and post the meeting day on the website, I believe, as well. Yeah. Senate meetings are the ones that we really hope to get a high turnout on, but class meetings we actually have been getting more people in as well.
That's fantastic.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
Is there a policy committee update I can give?
Policy? Is that right?
Yes, Marco's going to give a policy committee update. Yes, or are there other updates from committees before we go to the policy? No?
Okay.
So, not too much different from the last time we reported. The policy committee continues to be looking in depth at IGD, JIC, and JICD, as well as JICDE, which it's our respect policy. Basically, taking a look at our larger scale discipline policies in light of some of the information that we've received and the concerns that are being raised. We did have the advantage of having both our incoming principal at the high school, Steve Canosi, and Zach was present at our last meeting, and they offered a great lens by which other districts are looking at these same issues, as well as some of the history of how some of these policies came about. What was interesting in that discussion, as we flushed out, and Pip can correct me, the challenges of all of them in terms of how do you meet the intention of the policy well? How do you get the data to even understand if the policy is meeting the need? And are we responding in an appropriate manner that grows the student to avoid further situations? What was brought up by our school board lawyer is that the New Hampshire School Board Association has changed the way they look at policies now and has added the desire to create an intervention step before what you would traditionally see as a disciplinary measure. Of course, not in situations of which safety is of concern, where you would, before you can intervene, you might need to actually remove the concern. And I think that is a nice place for that change to happen in light of the conversations that we've been having, and that will need to filter into the conversation in terms of where do we go next with the policy. In terms of next steps, we have another policy meeting coming up in July, and I think at that point we will be ready to make some recommendations with our new leadership team as far as what's the right direction to go with IGD. We don't want to fine tune one part here and one part there if it doesn't fit into the larger backdrop of what are we saying as a district in terms of how do we respond, how do we manage, how do we prevent, and how do we communicate? So that's the lens by which we're looking at them. Is that fair?
That's an excellent summary, yeah.
Do you, I'm thinking of like the student handbook in the fall. This won't be all resolved by the fall, correct?
No, but I'm glad you asked. It was raised as a thought, and it was my understanding, I cannot speak for Steve Canosi, but it was mentioned that what would be really helpful for our student body and even our parent body is yes, we have the handbook, but can we boil it down to a one-pager, 3rd, 6th grade language on these are all the, these are the expectations of you, these are what would happen if not here. So sort of summarizing our policies in a way that it pops out on one page and isn't lost in pages and pages of language as a first step towards improving communication around expectations and consequences.
And that would be ready for the fall?
The hope is that would be ready for the fall, yes.
Well, that's encouraging.
With the change of leadership team and new training of things of that, I don't want to make that promise, but it was definitely well received, and that the intention is there to move in that direction. Would you say, you were both present, would you say that's a fair, okay.
Any other questions for the policy committee? Well, good work. Thank you. It sounds like you're really putting the metal to the grind, to whatever that expression is.
We're busy.
Margot, you had mentioned at a previous meeting that we were going to be changing the documentation on our policies so that the board might be able to not spend hours at this table making all the commas and grammar cleanups.
Yes.
Do you have any update on that?
Yes,
I wasn't
do.
sure what the status of that was.
So the new rollout would be when a week before the policy meeting, all board members will be sent a copy of the policy agenda with the hyperlinks for the policies. In that portion, that's the place to communicate out to the board. These are the policies the policy committee is looking at. If you have specific questions or concern, please direct those back to the policy committee so that we can discuss those. Then the second half is when a policy is ready to be presented to the board for approval. You will get that policy in your board packet. We're trying to get the board packets out even earlier, and each line of the policy will have a number. So as you read the policy, if you have grammatical changes or corrections, you would email those to me. Line 24, third period should be a comma. Line 12, you've missed a capitalization, so that we can take, the goal is, let's take the wordsmithing, the lengthiness of the wordsmithing. It's incredibly important to have the most amount of eyes on our policies, but doesn't necessarily sit properly in a board meeting. The beginning part is to front load making sure there's ample input into the conversations that we're having as a policy committee about maybe why was the policy even put on the agenda, or as you read the policy, what sticks out as not sensical for you, or maybe no longer in keeping with our board goals that you would like to be mentioned, so that we can avoid that part. At the board meeting, we're supposed to approve a policy. It should not be the time to discuss why do we have the policy.
That sounds really awesome. I have one quick follow-up on that. Would the intention be, like, let's just say, for example, you know, I look at it and there's a line that really doesn't make sense to me that would fundamentally change how it's implemented. Would we kick it back to the policy committee, or like would a certain number of board members have to raise the same question? I'm just trying to think how we can condense the amount of time we're spending at these meetings debating the verbiage.
That's a great question. And when we changed when we had so many new members a couple years ago, we decided everything was going to go through 2 reads, other than the ones that we're just updating to keep up to date with New Hampshire School Board Association. So we'll still keep the 2 reads.
Okay.
So that gives us the opportunity that if enough people say this line does not seem to match with the purpose, that kicks back to policy, they adjust for second reading. Great question. And that would be an appropriate conversation in a board meeting.
Thanks.
Any other questions of the policy committee? Thank you, Margot, and Lisa and Pip for your work on that, and Steve for being there also. Okay, what else do we have? Future agenda items. We discussed that we would like to talk to Zach about that at our first pre-meeting that we have with him in July before our next meeting. So we will, my guess is a lot of these will continue, but we will list a new future agenda items. If anybody has anything, let us know, because we're going to meet with Zach before our next meeting and finalize that list. So if you have any ideas, let us know, Margot or myself. And upcoming events. Do we have any upcoming events?
Last day for students on Friday, so. Summer
Middle
vacation.
middle school graduation Thursday night, 8th grade graduation Thursday night.
Oh, that's right.
And where is that?
Drive by it.
There's a drive-by at the front of the middle school.
I wondered because somebody had mentioned to me that they were taking their granddaughter out to buy a dress for graduation, and I said,
Car
"Oh, I
parade.
thought it was
It's a car
drive-through."
parade.
Apparently, they don't know that.
And Lisa, can you just help me? For Aquarius Dunham, there is a GoFundMe page. So is there I forgot to mention that in my remarks. Is there a specific address or?
It's a very long address. I believe Steve has it if we do want to share it out.
Yeah, I would refer people back to the newsletter we sent out a week or so
Oh,
ago.
okay.
Yeah.
It's in the Parent Square thread.
Okay, I failed to mention that. Okay.
Could we just, I know that, could we make mention of the fact that the time at which school ends on Friday is different by building? And if people have questions, they should go directly back
Contact
to
your
their
building.
building
Those will
head.
be communicated out if they haven't already, but yes, everybody's going to be, depending on when buses are picking up.
Yep. Okay. Yes, Liz.
I just want to thank the high school for the invite to the graduation. Unfortunately, didn't get my response back in time, but I appreciate the thought that went into sending all of us invitations and providing that space for us to be there as well. I don't know if any of you all were able to attend. Unfortunately, was not there, so I thought you guys got a great picture out of it, and congratulations to everybody. And I just want to say a big thank you at the end of the year to all of our teachers and everything that they've gone through this year. And, I know it's been rough, but I hope everybody's able to enjoy their summer and recuperate and come back next year refreshed and ready to, tackle another year. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, Liz. That was very thoughtful. Anything else? I would just like to say again a deep thanks to Steve and George for being with us for so many years and giving us guidance and leadership and love. So thank you, and we'll be seeing Steve certainly, but George, you'll have to keep us updated.
Just
when
find
you
me on the
become-
streets of Portsmouth.
We'll be watching it.
Be looking for your application, George, when you're ready to come back.
Wandering aimlessly, you'll see me barefoot. It'll be
Playing your
fine.
guitar.
Yeah.
Do you,
Yeah.
either of you have any last comments or?
No, just thank you for all your support, and we have a message for staff, but I want to thank you for all of your support and your acknowledgments tonight. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and thank you for your service, and look forward to partnering in other ways.
Yes, we certainly will. Okay, well, thank you. Do we have a motion to adjourn? No? People want to stay here?
It's a little early, don't you think?
early.
A little early. Feels like
There
we're
he is
missing
first.
something.
Who's, a second? Do we have a second? Pip's the second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
George?